to have Gilbert lead us with our last session today, and hopefully this is not the last time. Right, so before we start, let's have a short introduction. So Gilbert is one of the 5 lay Dharma heir of Sheng Shifu. He has over 50 years of experience in meditation, and his home base is in Southern California. He regularly lectures at the Los Angeles DDMA chapter and his own Riverside Chan meditation group. And some of you would have received the link that the past 3 lectures has actually been uploaded to the YouTube channel of Riverside Chan. He has also led retreats in US, Canada, Europe, and Taiwan. So before we begin, as before, we will do the refuge and vows. So please close your palms. The 4 great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Bao Wenxun. Refuge in the Triple Gems. I take refuge in the Buddha, and I wish all sentient beings will awaken to the Great Path and make the supreme resolution. Bao. I take refuge in the Dharma, and I wish all sentient beings will penetrate the sutras, their wisdom as deep as the ocean. Bao. I take refuge in the Sangha, and I wish all sentient beings will be brought together in great harmony without any obstructions at all. Bao. And before we begin, let us give a bow to our teacher, Gilbert. Thank you.
These classes went by very, very quickly. This is the last one. And it is one in which I have really tried hard to give you a taste of Chan in a manner that perhaps you have not experienced before. To teach Chan is not possible. To expose you to the proper practice and the investigation of mind is what is essential. Today, we're going to kind of do a recap as well as begin to prepare you as to how to meditate. Many of you think you know how to meditate, and there is a bit more to meditation than meets the eye. In order to do that, we have to establish a strong foundation in the basic true and proper understanding of mind. This is something that while we explore it, we study it, we do not attach to it. I had mentioned to you in the very first class that this is something that cannot be taught. So it's difficult to present something sincerely in a manner in which you can obtain a benefit without leading you astray. This is very, very important, and especially for those of you who are aspiring Dharma teachers, and some of you who are already Dharma teachers, that you have to be clear about from the very beginning is that what we're doing is we're investigating mind, contemplating mind, directly experiencing mind. We talked about ekayana, which is one mind. This comes from very early on, and was something that the Mahayana school built upon. It was kind of interesting because before I started this class, there was some concerns because I said that the these schools of the Yogacara school and the Tathagata Garbha school, Madhyamika, how they influenced Mahayana. And they said, no, well, Mahayana came before. Mahayana is constantly in evolution. So what I said was correct. It's constantly in evolution. It's constantly being cultivated by the practice. And as you see through all of the years, that since it was introduced to China, it has really thrived, and it's thrived by we could say confrontation and challenges, and different doctrinal perspectives that go with it. It is something that is very, very dynamic in terms of that. And we see all of these schools blending together in a way in which we have to understand those schools in order to understand Chan. Master Sheng was very, very much a proponent of studying and understanding that. And I remember once he was talking to me, and John Crook was there, his first Western Dharma heir. And he said, oh, John Crook, he's a professor of the Madhyamika. And I'm going, yeah, okay. And I'm saying inside my head, what is Madhyamika? I didn't know. I mean, I really hadn't gotten that far. And but I do know now, and I studied it. And as I began to study it, I realized that how it fits with all these other schools and how it's reflected in the sutras that we study, whether it's from the Lankavatara Sutra, or the Lotus Sutra, or the Huayan Jin, the Flower Adornment Sutra. All of these sutras, they are imprinted with all this doctrine. And there is a question as to when certain sutras, especially Tathagata Garbha sutras, when they came into being and where they placed here. And so it's not a matter of chicken or egg here. It's a matter that all of this is within the Buddha womb, the Tathagata Garbha. And as we see that, there is not a point to be made to say one came first before the other. What is important is how it fits in terms of the perspective of the practice and how it can help in terms of doing this. And this is why the later sutras, after the Prajnaparamita sutras, the Tathagata Garbha sutras, were expounding on the fine points of the practice and doing these tiny corrections that were there. And it's very important. If you take my Monday night class, you'll see, especially right now, where Manjusri is schooling Sariputra about certain points in terms of that. And it's so essential because it's going away from the idea of that there is a life and being, an ego or a personality or something to become enlightened to. It is not in this way. When we talk about awakening, it's very interesting because the awakening is not the awakening of an ego or a personality or life and being that wakes up and says, oh, I had a bad dream. It is not this kind of an awakening. This is still in the state of samsara. The awakening is simply mind awakening to the idea that every appearance that comes into play is simply a dream of mind. It is in this way. And we start that with the Diamond Sutra, and it's constantly echoed by all of the masters. And it's something that they are constantly referring to: a bubble or a stream, bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, all of these things to show that there's just simply a illusory appearance that's there that cannot give rise to any kind of an entity, or we could say any rise to an exalted or higher entity that's there. The Buddha is not an entity. The Buddha is Buddha. This is something that when we begin to look at it, it gives us a bit of disconcernment, because we're not really sure about that. We just know that what Gilbert's saying would be the end of me. It's not the end of you. It's the end of the dream and awakening to the Buddha mind. The Buddha mind is there precisely. And that is all that's there, but it is not an entity. And this is very, very important. So when we go to practice and we practice in meditation, what are we practicing when we're sitting in meditation? We bring our ego with us to the cushion. Follow the method, stay on the method, sit down, don't think. And you're there and bringing the ego there as some kind of an interested observer to the cushion. This is a dream watching a dream, practicing a dream. And this is something that we have to be very careful about. When we sit on a cushion, none of that is important. All of that, we have to give it a rest. How do we give it a rest? We give it a rest by, when we're sitting on the cushion, paying no attention to what's arising in mind, in terms of paying no attention to any kind of attachment to the thought. The thoughts themselves are perceived to be arising by mind itself. Now you've got it working the right way. And so if we sit in this way, where the mind is just simply taking a rest in the present moment, completely aware of what is arising in mind. That's all we have to do. But the ego doesn't like that, because in order to do this, we have to sever this mind that desires continuation. This is not your true mind. This is just some form of illusory consciousness. But when we sit with the correct attitude and true and proper understanding, we are aware that these things are arising, but mind is simply stable. It does not need to do anything with all of those appearances. It just simply sits. Our problem is that we don't have enough sincerity to sit properly. If you sit properly, it won't be long before you, I hate to say you, it won't be long until there is an awakening. And again, the awakening is simply mind itself coming out of the dream. And we say, well, how does that work? Because we all have mind, then our minds are separate. No, they're not. It's just that whatever you believe to be you is a dream. And when the mind is awakened, it is awakened, but it does not negate samsara. It does not negate appearances. It is simply understands that all of those appearances are manifesting in accordance with causes and conditions, which is mind itself. This is a very important aspect of our practice, that if you do not get this, then no amount of sitting is going to be able to get you to an awakening. You might get an enlightenment, but all that would be is a pseudo enlightenment, where you believe that you have come to some kind of an understanding or an experience, or be dazzled at the sensory gates and think that that is enlightenment, when it's not. It's just some kind of an experience that has arisen in the mind. And we should not take this consciousness to be mind. That's a fool's game. We look at consciousness and we understand that that is mind. That's a sage's position. Whether we have a sage or a fool, in mind's eye, there's no difference. There's no difference between the mind of a fool and a mind of a sage. How is that? Because all of it is made up of an illusion. The illusion is being created by the mind itself. There is no entity there. You have to accept this, that there's no individual life and being that's there, and no individual life and being to obtain enlightenment. There is no attainment. We talk about that, and perhaps sometimes I think we talk about it too much, about enlightenment, and we are constantly trying to reach for it. And as a result of that, we have a mindset that we have to get something. Where did that come from? From the rules of samsara itself. In samsara, there's constantly a grasping for something, to want to get to some place. But it isn't in this way. It is just simply that as one directly experiences mind, and when I say as one, I'm not referring to one as the ego, but as mind itself, ekayana, then there's no further discussion with respect to who is getting enlightened. It is understood that at this point, all mind does with this body is just rolls up the sleeves and says, what can I do with this body in this particular dream or appearance, so as to work towards alleviation of suffering, knowing full well that those who suffer are, we could say, illusory, they're transient, and they're dreamlike. So if you had a dream last night, if you asked, bring it forth right now so we can see it, you could not do that. Nor, as the sutras talk about, in many sutras, they talk about, bring forth the past, bring the future to this moment. And the present is never there, it's constantly changing. So where in fact can we establish that there's a life and being here? This is crucial to the practice. We have to get away from this idea of polishing the self. And in this way, this goes all the way back from Northern and Southern schools, and the discussion from Shen Shu and Hui Ning, and Shen Shu's gradual approach and Hui Ning's sudden approach of Subitism, of seeing things just as they are. And when we talk about the sudden approach is something that is, we have to lay the foundation for that. But when it happens, it happens. We should not be setting our clocks and watching for it to happen. It will happen in due time, but the proper conditions have to be there. So when we sit to meditate, we just meditate. We don't have a clock on. We don't have anything there. The moment that you have a clock on, the moment that you have some kind of an expectation, then you lose. If you just simply sit Let the mind take a rest. It doesn't have to fabricate any particular type of an appearance. It just simply is what it is. And you'll see. So that's kind of my preface, although it took 20 minutes. Sorry. Let's get to some of this, and you'll see. The first part, it comes from this book, Zen Buddhism, A History of Heinrich de Molen. And he's talking here, and he's referring to another scholar, and it says that it touches on the realm of the absolute, and yet it is not itself an absolute being. Lamott, this is a scholar, sums up things in his monumental study and translation of one of the seminal texts in East Asian Buddhism. Perfected wisdom is not being in the metaphysical order, nor is it subsistent absolute to which one can adhere. It is rather a spiritual state, transcending the categories of existence and non-existence, empty of every quality. Perfect wisdom can neither be affirmed nor denied. Its excellence, in which nothing is lacking. And this is mine. And we neither can affirm or unaffirm anything. It is just this way. And what in this particular passage from the sutra, what is happening is that the sutra is expounding on the Madhyamika school of the two truths, apparent reality and absolute reality, and looking at it and essentially bringing forth that kind of a training into that sutra. And so when we look at it in this way, we see clearly that this is how this works. Now, let me go to another one here. I'm going to move through some stuff fairly quickly because I want to keep you getting a feel for this. And in this quote, it's a discussion on emptiness, and there was a question: what is being negated in the context of understanding emptiness? What exactly is being emptied? What is true suchness? So the person who's asking these questions has absolutely no understanding of, or they're beginning to understand it and realizing there's no way to understand it. So it's a good question. So the answer is this: emptiness means being free from the two extremes of existence and non-existence, nor is one attached to the middle. That is the middle way. This well-known advisor is saying this is Madhyamika. As for true suchness, it is the teaching from the consciousness only and the Tathagata Garbha school. So this person's bringing in the Yogacara school, or the Shenwei Shulun from the Chinese, which was a progeny of the Yogacara school, like a child of it, and the Tathagata Garbha school. It is very simple to understand true suchness. Very interesting, because he says it's very simple to understand it. When you truly understand vexation, vexation is not different from true suchness. This person is very, very wise. This is very deep, and you see this quite a bit in the Tathagata Garbha Sutras. Foolish people who are enmeshed in all kinds of afflictions all the time and do not recognize them cannot know. True suchness, if you know your own negative afflictions very well, then you are in accordance with true suchness. So it's very interesting because he's saying, if you know your own negative afflictions, if you know the things that you attach to, then you are in accord with true suchness. I mentioned a few times before, it is the statement in another sutra that says that the Buddhas use the defilements of sentient beings to practice, which is the same thing, because the very mind that's investigating is the Buddha mind. So that's your mind. So you should investigate and look into this and see these negative afflictions, to know them, know that they're illusory, know that they're habitual patterns, know that they can, you can be released from that. When I say you can be released, is that the habitual pattern can little by little dissipate. When all afflictions, including the very subtle vexations, have been eliminated, that is Buddhahood. So I have to say that vexation is true suchness. Without afflictions or vexations, true suchness has no existence. This is very much pointing right to the philosophical bent, again, of the Madhyamika school, and also Tathagata Garbha school, where you're looking at it and saying, if it's this, then it's that. And you're looking at it and saying, okay, this is something that's being said from the samsaric side, and saying that these things, they're not really dual. They're not like you have an affliction and you have a purity of mind. It is just simply seen as the suchness of mind. That's the way the mind operates. There's a difference, because in one is discriminating and grading and trying to come up with some kind of an opinion or a viewpoint, which is subject object, it's duality. But when we see that afflictions are not other than suchness, or not other than mind, then where do you go from there? The consciousness cannot process anything beyond that, because you've come to a resting point. But we can't do that because our egos are so strong. We go, but I don't understand. So many people tell me this. I don't understand. I don't get that. And then when you say something, they still don't get it. So he says, true suchness has no existence. True suchness is merely a conventional name. So true suchness is just a convention. It's a conditioned name. As are the afflictions, they're conditioned as well. Which is why they say neither sacred nor profane. And then he says, this may be difficult to understand. The author of this is Master Sheng, my master. And it's very brilliant in its simplicity. And if you process it, you'll find that it will work for you. Go to another one. And this is concerning the practice. And this again is Master Sheng in an interview. And this was back in 2003. And I'll just read you part of it as we're running a little bit low on time. The integration of life and practice has very deep roots. In fact, we say that sitting meditation cannot bring you to enlightenment. Often we hear the master say, meditation not only is not enlightenment, meditation does not lead to enlightenment. Enlightenment in actuality is letting go of the self directly. This is very important in the manner in which he's saying this, letting go of the self directly. How do we let go of the self directly? The operative word here is directly. Directly is that if you were there and you saw in appearances that you grabbed a handful of sand and there were jewels in the sand, and you would let go of the sand and hold on to the jewels. This is the way we practice. But what's interesting is when we do this, we neither hold on to the jewels nor the sand, but experience directly the incredible vastness and richness of those jewels. We need not have to hold them in our hand. We experience directly mind. It is in this way that we practice directly. There was an old story of this monk who had gone to a lake, and he was sitting on a rock on a full moon evening, and he put his robe and slippers down next to him. And a robber came by, or a thief, and he snuck up while the master was meditating, and he took his robe and he took his sandals, and as he turned to leave, the master, without moving, just his mouth, said, "It is a pity I could not give him this moon." And this is something that struck me very, very strong. Very simple story, but so deep, because it is letting go of the appearances, letting go of samsara. And here this master is offering up this incredible vastness, wondrous function of the mind. So incredibly valuable. Incredible, so incredible that the Diamond Sutra talks about, if you only recite 4 lines of the sutra to another person, that its value is more than if you had the sands of the Ganges River, were Ganges rivers, and all those sands combined were treasure chests that one gave to the poor. What kind of merit was that? And yet the merit of reciting 4 lines of the sutra is greater. They're not even saying that the person is going to become enlightened, but you're setting that person on the path of moving towards that, and that is valuable. We have to see this from mind's viewpoint, not from the viewpoint of samsara. And samsara, when we start thinking about it, we start thinking about how could you be rich? Well, maybe if you hit the lottery or something and you got $50 million, that's a lot of money. But really, it matters nothing, because eventually that you will pass away. And no matter what, even if you could spend 50 million, what were you going to spend 50 million on? And so it's something that when we look at this, it's from a whole different viewpoint. It's from the mind's perspective. And the value is so much more incredible that we set about to sincerely practice this, not to grasp at this wealth, but understanding that this is the way that we practice in this way with no expectation. When we begin to practice with no expectation, then we're practicing in the proper way. That does not necessarily have anything to do with meditation. One puts down one's self-grasping through various methods. For example, Huineng became enlightened upon hearing these lines from the Diamond Sutra: the past mind is unattainable, the future mind is not attainable, and the present mind is not attainable. So you see, even Master Sheng is using the refrain of the masters from before, as I do as well, and hit these as highlights, hoping that one of these 84,000 Dharma doors will open for you. This is driven by the vow and this wondrous function of the mind. And then I believe this is Han Shan, but in this part, he says, put aside your body, mind, and the world. Bring forth the single thought of the method, like a sword piercing through the sky. Try to picture that, contemplate that. Imagine a sword cutting through the sky. Could you imagine somebody who comes and says, I'm going to slice the sky open? This is the practice. This is the practice. Upon awakening, the sky is ripped to shreds. How is that? How is it not? It is just, as one master said, sea foam or seaweed in the ocean. It cannot support you. It's just a bubble in a stream. Whether a Buddha or Mara appears, just cut them off like a snarl of entangled silk thread. Use all your effort and strength patiently to push your mind to the very end. What is known as a mind that maintains a correct thought of true suchness means correct thought is no thought. If you are able to contemplate no thought, contemplate, remember, it's not saying think of no thought, contemplate no thought. Contemplate means to just park the mind. But when we park the mind in contemplation, there's still awareness. It is the awareness of mind itself. Mind itself does not have to be reminded to be aware. It is its natural state. But we miss that when we sit to meditate. And we want to see what's happening. We want to stick our head out and to see everything that's there. So we are sitting on our cushion, and we're like a dog sticking his head out the window of a car that's moving. We're just looking at everything, trying to see everything, trying to do. We can't even breathe, but doesn't matter. We still want to see things. Quite to the contrary, if we contemplate, we find the way to rest the mind. I often say, jump. It is not you that jumps. What is means by jump is simply resting the mind, and it doesn't matter what appearances arise, because that's mind too. We don't have to look at them. We don't have to experience them. We don't have to think about time. We don't have to think about space. Just rest the mind in the present moment. My goodness, it's so easy. You have to choose to do this, though. And if you do this and you sit to meditate in the right way, it will work for you. If you don't, you're just going to be like that dog hanging their head out the window, trying to get this scent and that sight and that sound, whatever. And it will do you no good. Just like Master Sheng says, sitting does not equate to meditation. To enlightenment, I'm sorry. Huineng talked about meditation, and he talked about meditation and wisdom. He said the meditation has to have wisdom operating. And in wisdom, there must be meditation. This does not presuppose that one is just simply sitting with their legs crossed. Meditation happens all the time. So as wherever we go, we meditate. The only difference is when we sit cross-legged on a cushion, it's a controlled environment. We're not bombarded at the sensory gates with different information. We're just simply sitting. So it makes it easy for us to practice wisdom. So we have to practice this wisdom until there's no wisdom to practice. It is just simply mind. Let me see if there was any more here. Okay. If you're able to contemplate no thought, you're already steering towards the wisdom of the Buddhas. Those who practice and have recently generated Bodhi mind should have the conviction of in the teaching of mind only. This is very interesting. This is Master Sheng talking, and he's saying, or I'm saying the same thing he was saying, which is we do mind practice, mind work. If you really want to do this, if you've been able to understand a little bit, which I believe you have, then this is the right place. You practice mind only. This is how we do this, is that this is ekayana that he's talking about. And if you understand how to practice, how to set your mind at rest, then you're doing very, very well. Okay, the Buddha said the three realms are mind only. The myriad dharmas are mere consciousness. All Buddha Dharma is only further exposition of these two lines so that everyone will be able to distinguish, understand, and generate faith in this reality. The passages of the sacred and the profane are only paths of delusion and awakening within your own mind. Besides the mind, all karma of virtue and vice are unattainable. Your intrinsic nature, your self-nature of mind is wondrous. It is something natural and spontaneous, not something you can become enlightened to, since you naturally have it. As such, what is there to be deluded about? Delusion only refers to your unawareness that your mind intrinsically has not a single thing. And that your body, mind, and world are originally empty. Because you're obstructed, therefore, there is delusion. You have always taken the deluded thinking mind that constantly rises and passes away as for real. For this reason, you also have to take various illusory transformations in and appearances of the realms of the six sense objects as real. If today you're willing to arouse your mind and steer away from this direction and take the upper road, then you should cast aside all of your previous views and understanding. Here, not a single iota of an intellectual knowledge or cleverness of the mind will be useful. You must only see through body and mind in the world that appear before you and realize that they're insubstantial. Perceive all objects like drifting clouds. Everything is a constant state of flux. Not only is the external world like this, but your own deluded thoughts, emotions, notional discriminations of the mind, all seeds of passion, habit, tendencies, as well as all vexations are groundless and insubstantial. We have to apply this doctrine of equanimity and ekayana to this so-called ego consciousness so that we can see that that's belongs to samsara. That is not something that can become enlightened. Upon enlightenment, those things are seen as transient. They don't necessarily go away. They're just seen in that way. We'll continue on. And this is going back to Ling Chi again. And Master Ling Chi says, followers of the way, the really first-rate person knows right now that from the first, there's never been anything needed doing. It's because you don't have enough faith that you rush around moment to moment looking for something. And this is where the quote comes, you throw away your head and hunt for your head, and you can't seem to stop yourselves. You are like the bodhisattvas of the perfect and immediate enlightenment who manifest his body in the Dharma realm, but who in the midst of the Pure Land hates the state of a common mortal and prays to become a sage. So this is not correct, because here what we're doing is we're looking at this and we're saying that I want to become enlightened. I want to be wise. When people say that, I just say practice, just practice. You don't have to be looking for anything. Just understand it. It is just the practice that's important. So people who have not yet forgotten about choices, their minds are still occupied with thoughts about purity and impurity. This is very important, because if you practice in the proper way, you should not have thoughts about purity and impurity. The mind will naturally function in the proper way, because it's now operating from mind itself. So it's not that it's devoid of morality, but morality is what many of the masters say is the second choice or second rate. We abide, or I shouldn't say abide, we practice mind, and in practicing mind, the thoughts of inappropriate conduct doesn't come into play. It's not something that we do. It would be as if you offered a bodhisattva a cigarette, and they go, why would I want this? Well, it makes your teeth yellow and your breath stink and gives you cancer. Well, why would I do that? And so everything is just there with wisdom. No thought of any kind of an attachment to those things would happen. Not bad. What counts is the present moment. I'm sorry, I should say, but the Chan school doesn't see things that way. What counts is the present moment. There's nothing that requires a lot of time. Everything I say to you is for the moment only. Medicine to cure the disease. Ultimately, it has no reality. If you see things in this way, you will be true people who have left the household. And we'll go back to Han Shan again in a different part. And he's saying, generally speaking, the Dharma ending age, there are more people who practice than who truly have realizations. And that's the case, that when you say truly have realization, not just simply sitting with and your legs don't hurt you, but having a deep or profound insight, something that is beyond thinking, some direct experience that's there. Hold on. And he says, why is this? They don't know how to exert their effort directly. They don't know the shortcut. The shortcut is ekayana, just mind only. Instead, people are filled their minds with the knowledge and language based on what they've heard, or they measure things by their emotional discriminations, or they suppress diluted thoughts, or dazzle themselves at the sensory gates, or suppress diluted thoughts. These people dwell on words, and it says, words of the ancient ones in their mind and take them to be real. Furthermore, they cling to these words as if they're their own view. Little do they know that none of these are the least bit useful. This is called grasping at others' understanding and clouding one's own entrance to enlightenment. We study, we practice. I talk to you about these things, but what I do is I'm encouraging you, exhorting you to practice correctly. It is in the practice, not in the orator skill, that will bring you to an awakening. I just want to read a little bit more of this because this is very helpful for meditation. In order to engage in the practice, you must sever knowledge and understanding and single-mindedly exert all efforts on one thought. Here, if we're meditating, the thought is on the method. Have a firm conviction in your own true mind that originally it is bright, pure and clear. Without the slightest lingering thing, it is bright and perfect and pervades throughout the Dharma Dhatu. So when we talk about pervades throughout, it's because everything appears in mind. Everything is created in mind. This is very, very important. We do not use this term mind interchangeably with consciousness. Consciousness belongs to mind. And so we don't have this kind of a life and being consciousness. It is possible to function in a manner in harmony with this understanding. And he said, right at this moment, this single thought is itself unborn. Everything that manifests before you now are illusory and insubstantial, all of which are reflections projected on the true mind, all of which are reflections projected on the true mind. Work in a manner in which to crush away all deluded thought. You should fixate your mind to observe where thoughts arise from and where they cease. If you practice like this, no matter what kinds of deluded thoughts arise, one smash and they will be crushed to pieces. Master Yang Chia has admonished, one must sever the mind that desires continuation. This is because the illusory mind of delusion is originally rootless. You should never take a deluded thought as real or try to hold it in your heart. As soon as you notice it, as soon as it arises, notice it right away. Once you notice it, it will vanish. And that's meditation. When you're there, this is called awareness. You do not have to turn the mind's eye towards the appearances that are coming up because they're in all directions. What direction did that thought come from? Do you have a direction in your mind where the thoughts come from? From the middle of the mind, from the side of the mind, from where? From the back of the mind, behind you, in front of you? Where do your thoughts come from? You need not have to worry about that. You just know a thought has arisen, and that awareness of the thought will illuminate the thought, and the thought will no longer have a fertile environment in which to take hold. It is the obscuration of the mind that is the fertile environment to allow thoughts to continue. When thoughts are not attached to, the mind becomes naturally, or I shouldn't say becomes, it's bright and purity, the clarity of the mind is restored. And in that time, then thoughts are seen as arising momentarily, and it is an appearance. We know that the appearance is arising in mind. We don't have to do anything about it. Even if we tried to shush it out or shush it away or anything, where is it going to go? What part of the mind would it go to? Those who practice have reached. Okay, I think we got that part. Where are we at? This is Master Hongzi. Just expand and illuminate the original truth, unconcerned by external conditions. Accordingly, we are told to realize not a single thing exists. In this field, birth and death do not appear. In this field, what field is he talking about? He's talking about the Dharmakaya. In this field, birth and death do not appear. Why? Because it's an illusion. There is no birth, there is no death. Even if you were born in a dream or die in a dream, were you really born or did you really die? Think about this world as a dream. And can you say there's a birth and a death? Only in the dream, but not in absolute reality. The deep source, transparent down to the bottom, can radiantly shine and can respond unencumbered to each speck of dust without becoming its partner. And that's what you do when you meditate or when you're coursing through life and the environment. You engage it, but you don't become a partner of the samsara. The practice of true reality is simply to sit serenely in silent introspection. When you have fathomed this, you cannot be turned around by external causes and conditions. This empty, wide open mind is subtly and correctly illuminating. Spacious content without spacious and content without confusion from inner thoughts or grasping. Effectively overcome habitual behavior and realize that the self is not possessed by emotions. So this is how we practice. This is how we meditate. Sometimes we get excited when we meditate and we think that, oh, this is it. This is the big one. Something's coming, and you lose the practice. It is very natural as you begin to settle the mind that all of a sudden the consciousness, the habitual tendencies will not feel comfortable. There's this generated energy within the mind that keeps the samsara going. I equate it to the Chinese acrobats that have the plates on a stick, and they have to spin them like this, and then you see there's have so many plates. You know, they're holding them with their hand like that. They're on their back, and they got sticks between their toes, and they're doing them there, and they got one in their mouth, and they're just all these plates are moving and moving and moving, but they always have to be moving in order for those plates to stay spinning. But once they stop, the plates will naturally fall off. We don't have to toss them out or knock them off. By the nature, they no longer have an impetus of this energy that you're generating by swirling, and as a result, they will fall off. This is awakening. The awakening is not the experience of those falling off. The awakening is understanding that this happens. The awakening is those weren't really plates. That was just the spinning in the dream. And the awakening is that none of that is real. None of that is the unconditioned mind. We don't have to throw it all out. We understand that the conditioned mind appears within the unconditioned mind. There is no duality there. This is very, very important. No duality whatsoever. In duality is where the ego arises. So this is something that is very difficult for us to understand, or should I say grasp at. There's no grasping in this. There's just simply a settling. So when you sit to meditate, you sit and you're quiet. You create an awareness field 360, I couldn't even say 360 degrees. You create an awareness field in all 10 directions. You then bring the mind to the present moment, understanding that the present moment is not really a present moment. And you sharpen it to a needle point. You contemplate this needle point of time. If you have a method, then you're contemplating the method in this needle point of time. Not what happened afterwards, not what happened before. You sharpen it so you're balancing on the point of the pin. You just balance it. Leave your awareness there, contemplating your method. So instead of thinking about your method or bringing it up in mind, just contemplate the method. Let go. Let go. Don't worry about thoughts arising. The thoughts are naturally arising. Why? You put them there. So the understanding is that those thoughts are there because of the constant spinning of the plates. You have to have faith and you have to have patience to overcome those habitual tendencies. Pratika Samappada, cause and conditions never fail. If you sit to meditate and you only can hold the method for 5 minutes in a 30-minute session, the next time you meditate, guess what? You're only going to be able to hold it for 5 minutes in a 30-minute session. Why? Cause and conditions never fail. What if you really began to practice well? If you really practice well, I'm going to give you a piece of wisdom from most kind of a craziest source. There was a movie quite a long time ago called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And in that movie, these two young teenagers were transported into the future where they were playing this incredibly beautiful music, which everybody loved, and they were extremely popular, and actually they were world leaders. And then they came back to their garage where they had plugged in and they had the guitars and everything, but they didn't know how to play. They could just make just horrible sounds on the guitar, twang, and that's all they could do. But they looked at each other and they said, you know what? We saw our future. We saw what we could do. We saw how the people do this, and we saw how the people were expectant of us and our wisdom in the future and our guidance in the future. But we haven't even learned how to play our instruments now. And so then they just looked at each other and said, okay, it's time to really practice. This is you. This is you. It's time for you to practice. Sincerely practice when you sit on the cushion. You don't let up. You come back to the method. Come back to the present moment. Come back to awareness. Use your contemplation. There's a sublimeness that's there when you do this. And if you can do this, then you understand you're not practicing for yourself. You're practicing because in the future, you're going to be the one that's playing this wonderful music. Not only are you going to be playing it, but those that learn from you, that come in the next generation, they will play this beautiful music. Just as I learned from my master, and Master Sheng learned from his masters, who learned from Master Xu Yun and others. This is just the way it is. So it's time for you now to begin to practice well. You can do that. You have the Buddha mind. You already have it. There's nothing you have to search for. You just simply have to approach this with a true and proper understanding. That's what all of this was about. These 4 lectures was giving you the true and proper understanding to do mind work. Okay. So thank you for listening to me. Today was a bit of a whirlwind, but I wanted to make a statement in terms of what you're practicing and show this wasn't just something I made up. This is something that goes back to all of the ancient masters and as contemporary as Master Sheng. So thank you for listening. Practice hard. Keep an eye open for my classes. I have a regular Monday night class. I'm not sure what time that is in Singapore. It's Tuesday morning, I imagine, a little bit earlier. But if not, you can also access it through YouTube. So my lectures are on YouTube, and there's a lot of good lectures there. So if you're a beginner or if you're a journey person, then all the more so, please look at those and see what you can use to practice with. Okay, thank you very much. Let me take questions.
So before we begin, we have a question from a viewer on Facebook. She asked, there are times where I have no thoughts and I don't know what am I supposed to do at this stage when there are no thoughts. And then the thoughts of wondering what should I do arises. What would be your advice? Thank you.
It's very funny because an ancient master was asked that question, and he said, then just don't think about that. And they said, well, what if the thought comes up? And then he said, then carry it out. So like pick it up and carry it out and toss it. So you get experiences. This is something worthwhile, but don't let it become something that the ego comes in and takes credit for it. So it's like the ego comes in and you're sitting there and it puts its arm around you and says, you're doing a really, really good job. Just keep doing this. You don't have any thoughts at all. And you have to say, well, where did that come from? So ignore that. Please ignore that. Don't fall for that trap. That's a cheap trap of the ego that just wants you to experience something. Remember, the ego is goal oriented. So it wants you to have something that you can say, well, Gilbert or whatever master tells you that you did a great job and this is good. It's very funny because the Shurangama Sutra in the last volume, it talks about different kinds of experiences, and to some of them very, very incredible experiences, but it says these experiences are a sign that one is practicing seriously, but we must put them down and continue to practice. Otherwise, you could enter into a demonic state. Now, a demonic state is kind of like a little bit, it's not like your head's going to be spinning around or something like that, or you're going to be there communing with the devil. Demonic state means that you're going to be taken off of your practice, and you don't want that to happen. You want to stay with your practice, and so whatever you experience, then just let it go. Please let it go. All of you, if you experience anything, let it go. And this is the way it's done. Don't give it a second thought. If you really want to practice this and sincerely and seriously, don't ever think about what experience you just had or try to hold it, or worse yet, try to replicate it in the next sitting. Don't do that. Just sit, just do what got you there. Okay. And then just keep doing what got you there. Okay. All right, next question.
Please raise your hand. Lina, please unmute yourself.
Oh, Lina, hello.
Hi,
There you go.
Gilbert. Yeah, I have a
Wonderful.
question. Yeah. So a while back, our study group studied the 7 factors of enlightenment, and one member asked how we are going to apply the method, the 7 factors of enlightenment to meditation. And my intuitive reply is it's just let go and meditate. But this surprised people. So my question is that when we study theory and method about meditation, and how are we going to apply the theory to the meditation while we are do practice no mind?
Yeah. First of all, Lina is a very good practitioner, and she's had some realizations. I was very happy. Actually, she had some before and after I went to Poland, and she was there. She is one of the leaders of the Lansing Buddhist Association group, they've been around for quite a long time and have a wonderful Chan Hall in Michigan, which they all finance personally in their membership. So I wanted to introduce you to her. If you're ever out that way and we can open up again from the pandemic, then please attend one of the retreats there. What you said is right. We use all of this doctrine and these 7 factors of enlightenment, or the 37 factors of enlightenment in total, to practice. But as the master said, this is the second way, not the highest way. The highest way is ekayana, just mind, just this is what they call the first-rate practitioners. If you're not a first-rate practitioner, then you have to use these other methods. It isn't bad to use those methods, but you don't bring them to the cushion with you. They are there in preparatory to you sitting. When you sit, you should not have any thought at all or try to bring up any kinds of ideas. And you just simply sit, like you said, just sit. That's the best way. That, just like I told the lady before you, is that if you can't get rid of the thought, then carry it out and throw it out, because you just want to perfect meditation. There's no thought there. So there's just contemplation. And when we contemplate and we sit there, then when we get up, we can be in a state of wu nian, no thought. So wu nian doesn't mean that we don't have thought and we don't attach to the thought. So it's just better if we do it in this way. Okay. So you were correct in terms of that. So tell them I backed you up on this.
Thank you.
Amitofo.
We have another question from Facebook. Jun O asks, may I ask, how do I know if I'm contemplating or am I just thinking?
Is this Sister Jinho?
Yes.
I think. Okay. If you ask the question, you're thinking. If there's no question, you're meditating. So when I say you're meditating, remember, you should not think that I am meditating. You park the body. So the body has nothing to do with meditation. It is the mind that is contemplating the method which is arising in mind, which arose from mind. And so it's mind looking at mind. So it's as if there is 2 mirrors facing each other. They do not reflect anything but the mirror. If the method is there, then the method is infinite. And one just simply holds it in the present moment, infinite. And it need not go anywhere. There's no sequential thinking or sequential contemplation. It is just in that moment, it's that. And it's that clap that never stops to sound, just simply clear. This is how you meditate with a true and proper understanding. It's a good question.
So up next, Angela, please unmute yourself.
So who's
Angela? She raised her
Angela?
hand.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Gilbert, can you hear me?
Yeah, just speak a little louder.
Okay, come nearer to the screen. My question is about what is, I think today you talked about what is the correct practice and how we have the right view when we come to the practice. So I guess I quite haven't wrapped my head around my question, so I'm speaking it as I kind of clarify it in my mind. But my question is around like, you know, I mean, up until we are fully and awake, we will always have this constructed self, right? Or what we call the ego. So, so while on one hand, the ultimate mind is about nothing to attain and nothing to affirm or deny, but as we walk this path towards that, there is a path and there is still a sense of an I or ego. Like for instance, right, who is coming to listen to your talk today? It is, I'm guessing it is probably my ego, my I, the Angela that's coming. I don't think it's the mind, right, that's coming to listen. Probably what's giving me that push, that impetus to come and, okay, you know, I'm very interested in listening to Gilbert talk and I want to learn something. I think that's coming from my ego, if I were to identify it properly. And who's bringing me to the meditation cushion, you know, it's also probably the ego. So I guess I'm trying to understand if what is meant by like not bringing the ego, or I mean, what is the role the ego has to play? And is it correct that the ego is doing all these plans and you know, I shouldn't just like kill it, right? And then if not, I wouldn't come to talk. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out to the group. Can anybody confess Angela's sin for her? Nobody? You guys don't, you could never be a Catholic priest here. Nobody wants to confess what her sin is. And Angela, forgive me, this is just a play on words. It's not like you're sinner.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to say, I think everything is a cause and condition because Gilbert organized the teaching. That's why we all come to teaching. This ego with the Buddhist ego is completely different. Do not confuse the Buddhist ego is no self or non-self. I don't know how to say it, but that is ego is where whole body is whole is together one is what the one thought where all universe is one part. Our body is one part. With Angela ego is a physical ego. It's only say because our physical ego, you need to go to work, you need to come to the teaching, you need to do, this is driving you is different from the Buddhist ego. That's my simple mind, just thinking away. Sorry, I just want Gilbert to give more explanation, all right?
Very, very good. If Angela, if you're in a dream and you are thirsty and you got a glass of water, could you really quench your thirst?
In the dream, probably I would get a feeling of being quenched. Yeah, but ultimately, I guess there's no quenching.
Yet, this very mind that asks the question, it is able to drink all the waters of the Ganges River right now. This mind that you use is the mind that asks the question, not the ego. Let go of the ego. The ego wants to come up, and it is in survivalist mode right now, and it's trying to survive. It's trying to say, you need me, Angela. I'm the one that's going to ask the questions. I'm the one that's going to study. No, you're the one that's going to prevent me from studying and hold me back. Mine need not do anything but just awaken from the dream. And this is why they talked about the suddenness of it. It can happen very suddenly. And so don't hold on to the ego. Don't give it any kind of attraction in your mind or any credit or anything. It is belongs to the side of samsara. The question that was asked belongs to mind. It is real. It was uncreated, unborn. You have to have faith in this. I'm so happy you asked the question, because you asked the question for many, many people. And this is precisely why I am presenting this like this to you. I hope you have a chance to either listen into my Monday night class, Monday in West Coast, or at least review it later online, because I think it will help you a lot to break that down. I really thank you a lot for your question, because it's a sincere question. But just don't let the ego manage the car. It's like letting a monkey drive your car. I don't think you'd let a monkey drive your car, because eventually it'll end up crashing. So don't let the ego drive your practice, okay? Amitofo.
So we have a question from Facebook. The question is a bodhisattva always resting his mind? And does a bodhisattva sit every time?
What was the last part?
And does a bodhisattva sit? I'm guessing seated meditation every time.
Bodhisattvas, in terms of that, have no mind to rest. The mind is just suchness, true suchness. It is not a mind separate and apart from this Tathagata or the Tathagata Garbha, whether it's a mind ground or appearances within mind. It is just in this way. So when one sits to meditate and you are contemplating, clearly the only mind that's there, whether one has vexations arising or one is able to hold the method, is the Buddha mind. When we're clear about that, we make no distinctions as to whether somebody is an ignorant person or a sage. It is just this mind. So it is better for us to understand the aspect of ekayana and understand that this is the self nature or the intrinsic nature of our mind. Bodhisattvas are not different from that. And whether one is a lay person, a monastic, a arhat, a bodhisattva, or a Buddha, there's no difference. Ultimately, all of that is just mind.
So the same person also asked a follow-up question related to your reply just now. Which is a better lifestyle to becoming a bodhisattva? Is it being a monk or a lawyer?
I would have to say a monk. Lawyers, we have so many little trials and tribulations in terms of what we do. No, but it doesn't matter what one's occupation is. It matters what the practice is. You see, that is why in the Vilamakritti Sutra, they use the a layperson to represent this profound wisdom and indicate the self nature of mind. It's very interesting to use that and showing different distinctions, whether one is a layperson or whether in the Vilamakritti Sutra, there's a part where a goddess who is raining down flowers and the flowers stick to Sariputra, and then and so then Sariputra is engaged with the questions with her, and then he doesn't understand something in terms of the woman's viewpoint and the goddess's viewpoint, so she changes him into a woman, and then now Sariputra is trying to figure out what's going on with everything. He's very uncomfortable being a woman, and part of that has to do with looking at things and saying, you know, where we should discriminate or not discriminate. And another part is simply like exposing the Theravadan practice and kind of like using Sariputra as a whipping boy to show that you know, he's a woman now. He can't become enlightened or something because that he's further down on the pecking order in terms of things. It's very interesting. The reason I'm bringing this up is because whatever it is, whether you're a lawyer or you're a monk, you know, I know lawyers who are very reputable, very good, you know, and they could be monks. And I know monks that could have been attorneys, and monks that aren't very good practitioners, and I know monks that are great practitioners. So it's not, we don't make discriminations in this way. We just simply see that every moment presents a choice to choose the Buddha, whether one is has a robe on or doesn't have a robe on. It is the same thing. Yes, when we practice compassion, quite clearly, there's no distinction in that way. Okay, interesting question.
Maybe this is the last question from one of the private messages I'm getting. From your earlier lecture, you say we should try to practice to turn our mind inwards and observe itself directly. What are the key signs that I'm guessing signposts or that we are practicing wrongly? That we are not turning our mind inwards and observing itself directly? What are the key signs that we are practicing wrongly?
Well, I think probably the most important one is just not being able to control emotions, not being able to control the sequential thinking in the mind. One is the emotions, where all of a sudden something happens and we're out of control, and we are now being governed by our emotional responses of what we need to do to protect the ego or to save the ego or whatever. And the whole idea of whether it's a vexation of desire or craving or aversion, we become very adept at observing these, and not necessarily in the beginning ability to control it all, but we become adept to be able to observe these things arising in mind. And then when we observe them and observe the frequency of them and the strength of them in terms of the power that they're occupying the mind with, and the power that they're governing our actions, then we know we're not in control anymore. So when we do that, we want to bring ourselves back down. There's times when if I observe myself really either about ready to get out of control, or I've just said something unwholesome, I'm aware of it and immediately repent it. And I repent it to myself, repent it to those present, to say this is not the proper practice. And so you you don't just let it go. You try to rectify it as quickly as you can, and so you continue to bring forth wholesome thoughts in the mind. But you spot that, or when you feel it's coming, sometimes I will have a feeling of a temper starting, and then in that moment I will begin to recite the Buddha's name. Nam Myoho Tofu, Nam Myoho Tofu, Nam Myoho Tofu, Nam Myoho Tofu. And I can't be mad anymore because I'm reciting the Buddha's name. How can I be mad when I'm reciting the Buddha's name? Not bad. So it's kind of like a safety valve or a steam release that enables me to bring myself back to the present moment. It's kind of I would say, a cheap control method, but it's my last resort before I say something that's very, very harmful. Okay, but that's what you should do.
And with that,
We
we
have
have
one
come
more?
to our last question.
All right.
And on behalf of Dharma Drum Singapore, we'd like to thank Gilbert for bringing such profound Dharma to all of us. And we have learned much from you. And we hope that we'll have a chance to learn from you again in the future. So would you like to lead us in a dedication of merit and also any last words for us?
All right. I want you all to truly make the supreme effort to practice well, that you strengthen your vows so that all those in samsara will benefit, that you deepen your faith so that you have an unfailing faith in Buddha Dharma and your ability to awaken. May all of your efforts and all the merits that we have from you listening and from me speaking be transferred to those that you will teach, and may they strengthen their vows and continue on the Buddha path until all are awakened. Amitabha. I truly hope that you practice well. Now you know what mind work is. You know that it's beyond just simply learning the words or memorizing the words of masters. There is a practice there, and I approach this from different viewpoints so that you can see that there's a common ground running through the practice of Chan. And in particular, Chan is a very amazing practice because it is not just simply Yogacara school or Huayan school, Tian Tai school, Abhidharma school, Madhyamika. It is all of those poured into one school, the Chan school, and takes all of the best of those and puts it forth in practice to generate great compassion for the delivery of others. And this, in fact, is what Mahayana is all about, is this great compassion. It is what was the great turning of the Dharma wheel in order to do this. Everything else was built upon that and to have experienced the intrinsic nature, the self-nature of mind. But all of that is governed towards the great karuna, compassion to awaken others. So I hope that you can continue your practice with this. Follow me wherever I appear if you can, and I would say within a year's time of listening to my lectures, you'll be well along your way to having a very good grasp of Buddha Dharma, at least from the Chan perspective. So, Amitabha.
Let's all bow to teacher. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you all for being with us for the past 4 weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lowe, for being a gracious moderator.
Thank you.
And thank Singapore for for their efforts in bringing me to the East.
Thank you very much, Gilbert.
Thank you,
Thank
Gilbert.
you, Gilbert.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gilbert.
Thank you all.
Dharma time.
Thank you. Goodbye.